It's kind of nice that I'm starting to get some requests in, so I want to thank Eddie Wise today for giving me this topic to cover for today. I really appreciate it, man. Now, if I'm being perfectly honest, as much as I don't really like the cartoon review community in general, I don't really have any problems with Vailski. I can't really say that his videos entertain me all that much, but I do like the videos that I've seen so far. I also didn't bother looking into his Teen Titans Go videos, since I don't really want to retread that topic again unless someone makes a response to my video. However, I did find this. Now, the video itself isn't really all that bad. He doesn't say anything insane or say anything that really angers me. He just says a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with. Now, before I begin, I'm just gonna say that I'm skipping about a minute and 20 seconds ahead of the video because most of this is just not really worth covering. The first bit is an explanation on why the video even exists, and the rest is a long SpongeBob clip.
Think about modern Nickelodeon. Try to imagine some of the memorable cartoons from the past 5 years. There were definitely a few well-known ones like The Legends of Korra and Harvey Beaks, but now I want you to think of the Nicktoons that aired in the 90s and early 2000s. Right away, you're probably thinking of stuff like SpongeBob, The Fairly OddParents, Danny Phantom, Invader Zim, and the list can go on for so long. There are a ton of memorable Nicktoons that actually had good characters and stories, but now leap back to the present, and what Nicktoons do we have? SpongeBob is still running, and it has been getting better, but it's the only Nicktoon that has survived for so long on the main network of Nickelodeon. The Loud House is another great cartoon, but other than those two, what else is there? SpongeBob and the Loud House are two of the most shown cartoons on Nick right now, but the other recent ones have been forgettable.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. Outside of Nick Jr. and any other sister networks, the only other animated series that they're playing right now are Bunsen is a Beast, which really isn't that noteworthy, Welcome to the Wayne, which it looks alright, Mysticons, which is more so geared towards a female audience, but appears to be doing pretty well, and that Alvin and the Chipmunk Show, which is also doing fairly well. But there's a lot to consider when thinking about why Nickelodeon is currently playing far less animated series, when compared to our childhood. The argument you're going to be making in a sec is how the old programming was far superior, and how Nickelodeon currently is overly reliant on sitcoms. Nickelodeon isn't just a single channel. They have sister networks of their very own with their very own content streams. There's a lot of programming to consider. Nick Jr. airs shows that are for very young children. Nicktoons airs most of their old animated series. Teen Nick has programming for older audiences, and so on. However, Nickelodeon is the main channel since more people are likely going to watch it and more people have access to it. More children will likely be watching, and their main goal is to essentially appeal to those children, the children of this modern era. Disney Channel has been doing the same exact thing for years and saw success, while Nickelodeon is simply just doing more of the same thing, just with their own programming, and it works. These sitcoms do very well, so it goes to show that whatever does well for their network is going to be more profitable.
Over the past few years, we've gotten cartoons like Sanjay and Craig, Pig Goat Banana Cricket, and Breadwinners. You'll notice a trend with the Nicktoons starting around 2010, and it's the fact that most of them are just terrible. They typically have short runs, not many people care about them, and then they fade away into nothingness. Instead of good Nickelodeon cartoons, the focus is on sitcoms that seem to have zero substance and cannot compare to the golden ones like iCarly and Drake and Josh.
I'll hold off on the sitcom point for now, but I will say that these shows don't really have super short lifespans. Sure, other Nickelodeon shows lasted a decade on the air at one point, but these shows you mentioned have an airtime of over 2 to 3 years. That's not too bad, honestly, especially since these shows had 2 to 3 seasons each, and hell, Fanboy and Chum Chum, while it only had about 2 seasons, was airing episodes for nearly 7 years. These aren't shows that no one cares about. They were around specifically because they did well with younger audiences. Both Breadwinners and Fanboy and Chum Chum were very well received with younger audiences. You know, the people that the shows were made for to begin with.
So what's the sad truth of Nickelodeon? It's that cartoons have seriously lost their place on the channel, and everything good about them has disappeared. Let's go in depth with the older cartoons, and let's take a small trip back to the nostalgic early 2000s. I think you'll see my point clearly.
Well, sadly I can see where this is going. It's a nostalgia-filled discussion on why old school Nick was great because of the cartoons, and how Nickelodeon is mostly just sitcoms, which isn't really the most accurate sentiment when you really look into it, but I'm really getting ahead of myself.
As I said before, tons of amazing Nicktoons were airing during this time period, and all the characters are so lovable. Not only that, but the merchandise for these guys was great. Don't you remember the joy of playing the Nicktoons video games?
Nope. Skip!
Another nice part about old Nicktoons were that they had so many amazing bumpers featuring the characters. There was original stuff recorded and filmed specifically for Nicktoons advertising, and a good example of this was the Christmas party featuring all the characters. This was fully animated to show the connection between all our favorite Nickelodeon tunes.
Well, the Thundermans and Henry Danger did a crossover, so it's not like they don't do fan service schmaltzy stuff with their current shows. Sure, they don't have enough Nicktoons to make something like this work, but it seems like they're not against doing this with their other shows.
Let's fast forward and talk about the present. As I said before, most Nicktoons have completely ended by now, with the exception of the Fairly OddParents and SpongeBob. However, Fairly OddParents has gone massively downhill with the addition of so many new characters, and it was moved away from the main channel. SpongeBob is the last survivor, but that isn't good news. Can you think of a recent time where a SpongeBob game was good, or there was an awesome bumper with him? The truth is, there's just nothing. Nickelodeon has lost that extra spark that made it so special all those years ago, and instead they focus completely on money and only milk the stupid sitcoms. Don't get me wrong, Nickelodeon has always been a business, and their goal was to make profit with Nicktoons in the early 2000s. But back then, they actually put effort into their work, and it was like going the extra mile. I don't know what happened between then and now, but mindless sitcoms have taken over, and there are very few noteworthy Nicktoons.
First of all, it really grinds my gears when people assume no effort is being put into these sitcoms, and the only case you've presented so far is the fact that Nicktoons had a lot of commercial bumpers, fun merchandise, and cute crossover skips to help aid their enjoyment factor. You have no idea what the writing process is like for these shows, what their production system is, or even what they have to go through to make these sitcoms. Sure, they might have an easier ride, likely because live action is much easier to film than working on an entire animated series, but you also need to consider set design, makeup artists, special effects, CGI, and so on. Everything that goes into making these shows as weird and as goofy as some other sitcoms that Nickelodeon has aired in the past. Secondly, these sitcoms and live action shows are doing exactly what the other live action shows did for us as kids. Nickelodeon has always capitalized off of sitcoms and always geared them towards the children of the current decade. This isn't a new practice. Now, I was born in the mid-90s, so I don't really relate to anything that went on during these times, since I didn't really experience the 90s. Now, some shows were a bit of an exception, but again, my childhood was entirely in the 2000s. But when I look into the shows that followed their success, I noticed that they were preparing for this transition all along. iCarly was about a video blogger, made around the time YouTube was starting to become incredibly popular. True Jackson VP was about a girl becoming the vice president of a fashion company, which was made to appeal to girls, which makes a good chunk of the audience for these sitcoms. Just look at the Disney Channel. Victorious was about a girl going to a performing arts school, which helped launch the career of Ariana Grande. Fred the Show was made to capitalize off of YouTube's popularity and the people that were on it. And with the exception of Fred, these shows did very well and were very well received, because they're all marketed for the children of today, or the young adults of today. I went to middle school around the time iCarly came out, and I was about to go to high school during the time these others hit the scene, so most of these shows really didn't do much for me. But they weren't made for me in mind. I was getting too old for these types of shows, and that's perfectly natural. If they only stuck to the past and just made shows that my age demographic would like, then they would never succeed. But like I said before, they air most of their older shows on a sister network specifically for people that want to see it. The main channel is more likely to be viewed than any other sister channel, so it's where they do most of their field testing.
Things have really changed, and it's honestly sad that this had to happen. Kids growing up now don't know how incredible the channel was so long ago, and perhaps they never will.
Or perhaps they could just go watch Nicktoons. Simple as that.
But there's still hope for the future. Nickelodeon is bringing back old Nicktoons in the form of movies, which means they're trying to appeal to their previous audiences. Listening to the fans will definitely help a little, but I feel like they need to focus on new, original Nicktoons. Whatever they're doing right now is just so much worse, and they're trying to appeal to young kids with bad sitcoms and cringy memes.
Dude, come on. Sure, maybe they're trying to use these shows as a means to get older audiences to return, which means more ratings. But listening to the old fans is not the solution to your perceived problems with their station. Also, did you even consider the fact that kids might not enjoy the shows we used to watch? Now, my siblings are a bit of an exception. They certainly like stuff like Avatar: The Last Airbender and even Danny Phantom over some of the stuff that they're playing now. But kids aren't all the same. They might not like any of our shows, which is why they have modern Nickelodeon.
This is a sad truth about Nickelodeon, but I really hope things can change. It sucks to see such a golden network fall into the pit of darkness and take away what made it so special in the first place.
Sadly, no, it's not. The sad truth that you've built up is merely just a rant on why you don't like shows that are way out of your age range. What you find cringy and awful, someone else will enjoy, especially if you're ranting about something that isn't made to appeal to you. It'd be like me complaining about how The Lion's Guard is bad because it's not made to appeal to me, since I grew up watching The Lion King. That's just fucking absurd. I guess you can see my main point though. Just because you get older and are attached to what you used to love as kid does not mean that Nickelodeon is in a currently bad state. I just hate arguments that are based in nostalgia. You are totally free to enjoy what you want to enjoy. Maybe there is a problem with Nickelodeon, but the problems with Nickelodeon that you brought up are just subjective and completely fueled by your own nostalgia, especially since it seems like you're only ranting about how shows made for kids aren't entertaining you. Well, no fucking shit. Anywho, that's really all I have to say. Thanks for tuning in, I guess.